Reading,
So,
reading is for losers.
book 4 and 5 today. I thought they were pretty neat. Some of them I'm interested in hearing some responses on what you think something might mean or how to take it. But generally, so far, I will say my overall feelings about Stoicism, assuming Marcus Aurelius here is the prime example, right? Is I generally like it overall. I vibe pretty well with probably 85% ish of what I read. I feel pretty good. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like, it feels, especially in these books, that a lot of it is, if you're in the right mind, if you're taking right action, then you're doing good, bruh.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting when he talks about nature here at the beginning of book 4, and he says she moves forward with a preference in her choice, but if anything comes across, she falls to work upon it, and like fire converts it into fuel. For like this element, when it is weak, it is easily put out, but when once well kindled, it seizes upon what is heaped upon it. Anyway, this is a very powerful sentence. I like that. It was very like, call to arms. And it reminds me of how I was talking to somebody about how my biggest recommendation when dealing with bouts of anger is to find ways to make it productive, because anger is such a high energy emotion.
Yeah.
That if I can redirect it and utilize it, I can usually get stuff done with it.
That is evolutionarily what it's for.
Yeah. And if you can see it as a tool, I think it's less frustrating to be like, why am I angry?
Right.
Mostly I was talking to a student about this. A lot of my students and I, our deepest interaction is, why do I have to do this work? And I have to give them a real answer, or because I said so. But sometimes my students surprise me with the things they want to talk about. And one student was talking about their anger issues, and that was my take on it. It is in your power to withdraw into yourself whenever you desire. He talks about like people traveling and stuff here at the beginning, and what that is, and that I think effectively what I got from it was that no matter where you're at, you're in a position to. I don't think the Stoics think of it necessarily as meditation, but that meditation isn't limited to your environment. That's kind of what I was getting from some of this. Over here on this side, I'm spending a lot of time on these first 2 pages, and I apologize. There are huge chunks of these books that I actually have nothing to say. But over here, what I really like on the second page is that when he was talking about effectively like bad people gonna do bad things, and he says that a couple times in book 4 or 5, is effectively if your nature is ill, or if you are of somebody of a certain disposition, these behaviors are just gonna come. And I thought that was an interesting thought process, but mostly reminded me of the practice of loving kindness, where we have to think about all the different ways that we don't understand why people do what they do, and to be kind and patient with them anyway. And then he gets a little dark here eventually. First, he starts off with, if you are pinched here, consider how quickly all things vanish and are forgotten. He talks again about going into yourself. I like how he calls it the little realm of your own. Cute. And to remember that things can't disturb the soul. I think that, I don't know, I just like the wording. I'm a fan. But then over here, he effectively says, don't worry about it. You and your enemy will both die someday. And I was oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Word.
He's always really emphasizing in his writing, it feels like, that you should be a good person, or a person of character and virtue. And that he says here, which I highlighted this part in 11 in blue to remind myself, because I think it's something I'm having to take personally with me into my teaching, because I've had a particularly difficult week this past week. If a man affronts you, do not accept his opinion or think just as he would have you do. No, look upon things as reality presents them. And as far as I've interpreted that, it's let people tell you how to think about yourself. And
Yeah.
I vibe with that, and I appreciate the reminder. And I've had a couple teachers effectively tell me the same thing when I vented to them about this particular class. And so I really appreciated the reminder that they don't get to choose my narrative. Then I thought this was funny. Have you any sense in your head? Yes. Why do you not make use of it then? For this faculty does I don't even do its part. I cannot see what more you need wish for. I don't know. It was funny. Oh, he was just like, you got any brain cells in there? Why aren't you using them? And then he gets real dark over here, and he's like, do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away. Death stands at your elbow.
Good.
I'm like, yep. Thank you for making me face my mortality today, Marcus. Appreciate it. He talks about how things are not affected, their quality is not changed by whether or not we appraise them to have value. Effectively, is what I interpreted some of these pages to say. He kind of summarizes that thought with, I hope an emerald will shine nevertheless, for a man's being silent about the worth of it. Once again, do not run riot. Keep your intentions honest and your convictions sure. Which I think is really just another way to phrase a lot of his thoughts, really. Is just that he really values the honest man, the person who is what they say they are. Which I get. He's, I think, being real, being authentic. I don't know why this sentence made me laugh. Am I not upon the verge of something unnecessary? Which is how I feel when I look upon treats and sugar. Never be disturbed, but let your purpose be single. Once again, that not letting other people change your foundation, your conviction. Feel free to stop me at any time, guys, if you have any thoughts. I'm just gonna keep talking if no one stops me. I liked this because I've been talking about the elements and principles of art with my students. Now can any man discover symmetry in his own shape and yet take the universe for a heap of disorder? I thought that was a neat thing to say, that we see symmetry in some places, but why can't we apply that to all things, right? Like, oh, I've got myself figured out, but everybody else is a hot mess. I think this might be a product of the times, but Marcus really has mentioned sort of this same thought a couple times of be satisfied with your business and learn to love what you were bred to. And I think it can be taken out of context a little of like, just accept the lot in life you were dealt. But I think and I'm tying a lot of things into my teaching career right now, so bear with me, that it reminded me very much of, I have kind of trained and pursued the study of how to be a teacher, going to college for it, and often even pursuing in my free time how to improve my pedagogy and how to deliver information and classroom management. And so in many ways, I think one could argue that I have been bred to teaching because of these things. And so to be satisfied in my business is sometimes a difficult task because of outside factors, but I don't wallow in those factors and be like, oh God, why did I become a teacher? Right? I try to recall the things that I love about teaching and why I chose this path, even if it means someday changing that path and be like, oh man, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I don't see that happening anytime super soon. Even if I change the context with which I teach, it may be that I go back to working in a community center instead of being in the public school system, right? But I think that I have shaped myself in a way that teaching is kind of my best fit, even though I still continue to wonder why I lead book club sometimes. So I feel like I just say garbage to you guys.
It's
Like,
because you're
oh yeah,
teaching us, Des. Come on.
I'm not.
Actually, if we go back to that quote, I think you're right. I do think that he is talking too about, sometimes you're born into something and raised, especially at that time too, where it's maybe more common for children to do the same profession as their parents,
Right.
and especially in his situation where he literally was born into it. He didn't really have a choice. He
Right.
can't just not be the emperor very easily. Like that would have been a whole. He had to do a lot of, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to do this and I would like to choose something else, but this is just who I am. But like you said too, the things that you're trained to do, I think there's a third part of that as well, which is that like some people are just born with certain personalities or certain things that come much easier that make them better suited for certain kinds of jobs
Yeah.
or activities than others. Like some people are just naturally a lot more charismatic and are better able to think about language and
Right.
some people are made to be orators and they still have to study how to do that well, but they could have a more natural inclination to that type of activity and take to it much more easily. And maybe they're kind of really bad at something else. And there, of course, you can learn any skill, but there will always be a gap between the people who kind of naturally
Right.
have
Absolutely. We have
just certain
our
genes, right?
Mm-hmm. Like my brain learns certain information easier than others. I worked real hard to get to advanced level of math in high school. I hated it, hated every step of it. My brain does not want to know math, but I did it, and I hope to never do it again.
And maybe that's just one of the things to be resigned to, is that that's not your calling, right? When we talk about a calling, like we know there's some kind of innate part of us that lead us towards certain things. And
Well, you have the colloquial phrase "cut from the same cloth" or "cut from a different cloth."
yeah,
And I think that
right.
that makes sense to me. Of there's just certain fibers that run through us that are similar to certain ways of being versus others.
Or even enjoying it, right? You can be very good at something and never enjoy it.
Right, right, absolutely, absolutely. The curse of competence, but that's a whole other conversation I won't get into right now.
Mm-hmm.
Des isn't angry that she's the tech teacher for a 9th grade class, even though her certification isn't in tech. No, it's fine.
Not at all.
No. That's a whole hullabaloo at work. Here he goes. Thus, if you refrain from trifling, you may part with amusements without regret. I thought that was interesting. As far as I can interpret this, I get this feeling of enjoy the thing. Don't mess with certain things, and then if you're not overly attached when that season in your life's done, it's fine. But I might be misinterpreting this. I'm getting a sense of like things will come and go, but don't be overly attached to them. But that might be the bias of I'm looking for Buddhist thought a little bit.
No, I think you're on the money with this one. There's some, significant overlap. And yeah, so I think in this highlighted section, thus if you refrain from trifling here, I think is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
For if you refrain from, say, attachment or overindulgence, etc., whatever,
Yeah.
you may part with amusements without regard or regret, because I mean, if you're not attached to it, what do you care? Like, I think you're on the money with that one. That makes sense to me.
Excellent. Go team.
Yes, yes.
Oh, so I thought this one was interesting. I'm interested to hear what y'all's interpretation may be. But if you take seed in the common notion and confine it to the field or the womb, you have a dull fancy.
Hmm.
My hot and fast interpretation was that if you've taken common wisdom and like just general common sense or whatever information, and you only use it in one particular instance but don't apply it more broadly, then you've demonstrated kind of a inefficient
Oh.
mind. Or
I think he's just literally saying if you're not understanding that seed in my previous statement is a metaphor, and you're only thinking about like an actual physical seed or the way they use seed for like a fetus and
Yeah.
an embryo,
mm-hmm.
that you're stupid.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you're not, your mind isn't good enough, and you're not gonna get, like, if you're thinking that I'm talking about that, just you don't get it. Like the
Yeah,
whole point of
that's
this
not too
paragraph
different
is
from what I was thinking. Yeah, that's not too far off from what I was trying to say.
because
So
he's said the whole paragraph is everything that we make comes from something else, and the things that we, this transformation that we have created on this object will then be the seed for the next transformation that somebody else will do.
yeah.
And if you think I mean seeds like in the ground, you're stupid. That's it. It's a very fun way to say it, but that's
Yeah, that's a
I
good
don't think that
interpretation.
was the point of the paragraph. It was just kind of the last. Like, he could have just not put that sentence in at all.
He's feeling
But just
spicy.
Yeah, just to clarify, to make sure you don't misunderstand what I just said. If you think about it this way, no.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I thought this was neat. I don't know if I had a lot of thoughts on it. You ought frequently to consider that the world is an animal consisting of one soul and body, that in universal sense runs through the whole mass of matter. I just thought it was neat.
But it kind of sounds like interbeing with the next sentence added on, right?
Yeah. It
Should
definitely
likewise
gets...
reflect.
Mm-hmm.
This is how nature acts by a joint effort and how everything contributes to the being of everything. What connection and subordination there is between causes and effects.
Epictetus will tell you that you are a living soul that drags a corpse about with her. I'm like, ooh, dark. I like it.
That, no elaboration, just...
That's it.
That's all you needed.
That's
the
all I
whole
needed.
thing.
I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, good. In short, mankind are poor transitory things. Yep. I don't remember what was going on over here. What has become of... Some hullabaloo was happening. Therefore, do not let a thought of this kind affect you. Just another kind of stick in your own lane sort of thought. Oh, this was interesting. Always go the shortest way to work.
Good.
All right, all right. You don't like detours, Marcus? It reminds...
I think he might be saying, like, because at the time it would be more common for people to be out and about to engage with their neighbors in various debates. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the political stuff was happening in the streets, and the philosophical stuff was happening in the streets. And
In the
if you're
sheets.
going, I mean, maybe, but a lot of times it's like this. That is the setting. Like, literally, just in the streets is the setting for all of these kinds of conversations that are very easy to get lost in. So I think by saying go the shortest way is like, don't engage with these things. Like, your task is to work and be productive, and you need to avoid. Like, at the end, he says not quarrel, flourish, or dissemble like other people. Like, just don't engage with them. Just go straight to work. Don't talk to all the people who want to get engaged in politics and stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, and also though, I'm like, Marcus would be so disappointed in me because I'm thinking about like during my prep period at work. Oh, I gotta go make copies. I'm gonna stop in this teacher's room. They're also on prep. I'm gonna say hi and chat for 30 minutes.
I'm sure he would, not want you to do that either.
Yeah, he's looking down on me.
It just seems like maybe that sentence was directed, like, if you think about the situation of the time, it was most likely, And yeah, maybe you're talking about also some mildly, like, political and gossipy things and whatever. Maybe it is the same thing. But...
All right, baby, time to learn some stoicism. All right. I've been handed a baby.
the smartest baby now.
You will be the most philosophical of babies. Is not action the end of your being?
The way you delivered that was just great.
Yeah, that sounds a little strange in isolation too, but if you start at the beginning of the sentence, which is actually granting that, were you born only for pleasure? Were you never to do anything? Is not action the end of your being? So the point of living is to take action, not to enjoy.
I have to tell you, though, I'm very fond of taking sentences out of context.
But the meaning comes from the context, so...
Yeah, you're right.
Like, when he means action here, like, the part before that changes how we're reading action, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And end as well. Like, end meaning goal, in this case, rather than, like, finite or final.
Right. Let's see. Does any natural defect force you to grumble, to lay your faults upon your constitution, to be stingy or a flatterer, to seek after popularity, boast, and be disturbed in mind?
No.
Good. But then you will say a man ought not act without reflection. And then, I think to tie in what Lee said, I can't just be taking a bunch of sentences out of context, but if you mistake my meaning, you will become one of those untoward benefactors I first mentioned. Indeed, they too are misled by the plausibility of their reasoning. So, tie that in. I could plausibly reason a lot of stuff from his writing if I want to take little tiddly bits out of context. So...
Good.
Let's see. He's talking about people. I highlighted this to point out where he's like talking about people who kind of believe in, what is the word? Predestination almost?
Determinism?
Yeah, determinism. Thank you. And then he's just talking about that fortitude and that resilience and the bounce back nature over in number 9. If you get beaten down, get up again almost situation. And then I liked this sentence only because I've been amused by the modern appropriation of the word receipt as a way of saying, here, check my receipts. No, you must apply to philosophy with inclination, as those who have sore eyes make use of good receipts. I don't think that's what that means. It's not related at all to receipts. It just says receipt. I added an S. I don't know.
Just bouncing all over.
I know. He's just generally pushing for, being a person, having adaptability, I think, to an amount, and being a pretty person without reproach. Beyond reproach, that's the phrase. However, our ignorance is not so great, but that we may discover how transitory and insignificant all things are, and that they may fall into the worst hands. Oh my God, you're so heavy. You're lucky you're cute, or I would just drop you on the ground right now. What use do I put my soul to? Is it a serviceable question, this, and should frequently be put to oneself? As far as I can get from that section of this idea of wanting your life to have meaning, maybe, or to have been to good use. I don't know.
I think it's about taking direction of your own actions.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. And then I mean, this is good stuff. The fact that I didn't highlight doesn't mean it's not good. Nothing was like, oh, I gotta talk to people about this. Oh, this was fun. To expect an impossibility is madness. Now it is impossible for men not to do ill. So I saw a similar sentiment. I pointed it out in book 4, but here he kind of points at it again, of this idea that, circumstances gonna circumstance, I guess.
Haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate.
Actually, if you go back up, the paragraph right after that thing you highlighted,
Yeah.
I think that's something like that. It looks like kind of what we talked about last week.
There's nothing happens to any person. Ah, yes.
Like, the people go through a bunch of bad things sometimes, and they can't do more than what they're capable of doing at that time, and
Yeah. And how can I judge how you respond to a situation if I haven't lived your life and done it
Like,
different?
he's maybe saying it slightly different than what we were saying last week, because he, at the end of that, does say to let ignorance and vanity do more with us than prudence and principle. Like, we are capable of choosing something different nonetheless, but like, if we are using our reason and all of these things that he thinks are kind of inherent in all, I think earlier I saw something like he was saying more or less that rationality and the ability to think at this level is inherent in all humans, and that if you're not doing it, like, just do it. I think, like, maybe that's a part of the one criticism I have is, although I think that many people can do majority of what he's saying, and that the things that he's saying are largely correct and good to aim for, I do also think that there are some people who just are actually incapable of cognitively performing at the same level of some other people. Like, no matter how much they were to study or how slowly you went, that there is always going to be like a gap between some people and other people. If you take the same...
So somebody with severe dyslexia is never going to learn to read the way I want them to, no matter how much I make them practice.
Or even, like, we're talking about philosophy and some concepts and, like, following logic through those concepts. It's when we talk about inaccessible, sometimes that's just by familiarity, and if you give if you lay the groundwork, now all of that makes sense and it's easy to follow.
Yeah.
But some people, the groundwork doesn't ever really get to them. Like, even if you present it to them, even if they have the literacy to be able to interpret the words and things, like, just, like, the complexity of the ideas seem lost on some people. Like, there is, we aren't all equal. We don't all have the same brains. We don't all have the same genes. And even absent some kind of condition like dyslexia, doesn't, like, I still don't think all the brains are the same.
Right.
And I think Aurelius is probably
suffering from ableism.
Well, some of that, I mean, I'm sure there's but I'm saying even people who don't have any kind of anything we would consider to be a disability that interferes with the like typical or optimal functioning of the brain, right? Even if their brain has nothing that should limit that functionality, there still is enough variance in the species that two neurotypical people have different levels of cognitive ability, and that just because you present them the same information and they have the same skills in terms of, both of them had gone to school, learned how to read, understand the vocabulary that's being used, they still, it's possible for one person to be able to achieve a higher level of thought than the other person, just from variance in the species and from our genetics and things like that. And then you add on top of that all of these more complex factors, like people don't have equal education
Right.
and equal access to like quality food for health, or environments that are going to be healthy for their development. Or then you also have like the cultural factors of some places and people telling kids that school is not something they should go to, and all of these other factors on top just exacerbates that gap. But I think maybe one of the big things for him is he having had not only the privilege of having, very nice education and
Right.
not ever unintentionally going hungry and things like that, also seems to be somebody who is capable of actually using all of that education that he had had the privilege of getting for all those years in a way to, a lot of the thought here wasn't just repetition of what others were saying. These are criticisms of the way that his culture and society and the common philosophies, and saying, well, this is right, I like this, but this one's not, and if we look at this in a rational way, then we can infer blah blah blah. And he gets to some like really good points without having to necessarily just copy them from others, and not everyone can do that, and he seems to think everyone can do that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably maybe, and I guess again, this is his personal writings. This is not a book that he wrote to be teaching the public, so maybe it doesn't matter that, but that is, it seems like he thinks everybody can and should be able to perform at the same level.
Well,
If
there's
they
got
had,
to be a minimum level that, ability or disability aside,
yeah.
there's a common ground we can all stand on, and the question is what he's suggesting beyond that or not, right? I don't know if it is, but I also don't know that it isn't. Um, if it's just paying attention to what you're doing, I think most people could do that. But if it's just, this, what is it? I've already forgotten what point he's making. Damn.
And I wasn't thinking about just this part, kind of just overall too.
But like, yeah, it's hard to say from a big cross section of humanity where is that line. Like you can say it with someone that's got uh, cognitive impairment or whatever. Well, you can't expect that from them. They're impaired, so that's not a safe comparison to make, right? But I don't know. I don't know if like I can see why he would make this mistake.
Yeah.
I remember back when I was, 10 years younger and still studying philosophy in school, thinking like, oh, anyone could learn this if they applied themselves. Like that whole thing. Um, I don't know if that's true, but it certainly feels true in the moment, you know?
Once you have and I'll say enlightenment, not in the broad sense, but in the very like small moment of I now know a thing that I
Right.
didn't know before, and it was here the whole time, but I just didn't see it that way, and now I am enlightened of the truth of this concept here. And yeah, it definitely does feel that like, it's so simple. I should have seen it sooner.
If
Everyone should be able to see that.
right, if even I can understand it, surely
But I don't
everyone else
think
could.
like it's
It,
not
it,
always.
it's not a one-to-one. You can't make that assumption, even though desperately I want to every time. It's just not necessarily um, based on facts, you know?
Yeah, I think you were kind of saying that, like mindfulness is achievable by everyone. That is maybe a base level that literally everybody is capable of paying attention to what is happening, what they are doing, the sensations in their body and outside, like around, in their environment. And everybody can do that because, well, even maybe some other species can do that as well. There is some. It's kind of a prerequisite for a lot of other things that we do, right? The ability to be able to. We still may have to train in it, but we all need to be able to do that. But maybe he's here Aurelius is talking about so many other things that people
Right,
should be doing,
right.
and that I think some of them go a bit too far beyond that if we think about mindfulness as a baseline, which he definitely talks about too. But then there's all these other factors and
Uh, the ease with which he is suggesting one can implement these types of teachings may be a bit too much. Uh, because it's simple to talk about, oh, just, discard the things that amuse you because what do you care? It's not like they're important.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I get what you're saying intellectually, but damn it, that was really fun for me, and now it's gone, and I'm gonna regret that I can't do that now. And like, yeah, I get. That's the point of this book. Is like, but stop that. That makes you suffer. But yeah, I mean, it's not at all easy, or really even sometimes simple, although it is more simple than easy.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
sorry, maybe a bit of a tangent from the
No, it's fine. It's
from the
fine. It's
text.
great. I like it. Just as far as the reading's concerned, though, I liked the part where he acknowledges change is always and everywhere at work. It strikes through causes and effects and leaves nothing fixed and permanent. That nice touch on impermanence. Um, he acknowledges a lot of what he's been saying before, I think, and saying that as for me, I am in the condition and universal nature assigns me, and I'm doing what my own nature assigns me. Of like, I'm doing what my circumstances have permitted me to do. And then I laughed over here. Are you angry at a rank smell or an ill-scented breath? What good will this anger do you? And I'm like, legit, bro. Legit.
I wish you joy of your discovery.
Oh, I thought this was cute. The soul of the universe is of a social disposition. For this reason, it has made the lower part of the creation for the sake of the higher. I just thought it was cute to think of the universe as social creature. And then he's like dark again. You will quickly be reduced to ashes and skeleton. I'm like, too real, bro. Too real. I don't want to face my mortality today. And then I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's either referring to some real accident or the accident of having life. If this accident is no fault of mine nor a consequence of it, and besides, if the community is never the worse for it, why am I concerned? Mostly he seems to be hitting on things like over dwelling on things that are outside of your control. And because other people are fools, must you be so too? I can at once become happy anywhere, for he is happy who has found for himself a happy lot. Cute. I like it. It's fun. To me, it's fun. I guess I think I could get spicy if I was like, man, you're oversimplifying it, Marcus. Not everybody can be just happy, man. But I like the optimism in it, despite the fact that he seems to really push for not being overly anything. Like, don't be too optimistic. Don't be too happy. But I get a lot of optimism from his writing, I guess, of look how good we could be. Look how good people could be. We just gotta work on it. And that is the end of book 5.
We did it. Max, I don't know if you're coming through on the voice chat anymore.
Check.
Nope.
Yeah. I tried to message you about it, but at some point you just stopped coming through.
Well, it's good I'm not coming through now, because it'd be picking up your mic.
Is there something you wanted to comment on, Max?
No.
Okay.
No, Max had just been, like, responding energetically to things throughout the last little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely couldn't hear it.